There we go, Becky. Well, welcome to your first meeting as finance chair.
Hi. So I'll start by reading the accessibility statement. This
Yes.
meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833, extension 202. The Notice of Non-Discrimination Rights and Protections to Beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website. Again, please contact Mary Waldron at the right number is.
I wish I knew my own number. 774-539.
Something.
Something.
You can reach her via that phone number. Just get rid of
1833, just take out the extension
number one.
202.
Right.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
508-583-1833, extension 1
Thank you.
for more
Perfect.
information. Thank you.
Great.
And if anyone ever has a question about these, they can always contact Mary at the Old Colony Planning Council with more information on our website. All right, moving on to the agenda, if we could pull that up.
Yep.
Great, so the meeting has been called to order. We've read the accessibility statement, and Mary, are you going to do the roll call?
I will. So starting with you, Madam Chair, Becky Coletta,
Here.
Stephen Santusonio,
Present.
Lee Hartman,
Present.
Valerie Massard,
Present.
and I think that is it.
So that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is review committee members. And here we have a question of, so we have the executive committee and we have the finance audit committee as our committee assignment. So it's right now it's, so Frank Staff here and Stephen Santusonio and
Yeah.
Christine Joy and Val Massard are all on the finance committee per se. And then Jean Marie Kent Joyce, Sandra Wright, and Lee Hartman are on the executive committee.
That's correct.
So the question, I guess, is whether or not we need to add any people to the finance committee. Val, did we decide that for now we're going to leave things the way they are unless someone has an objection?
I believe that's where we're at because we didn't have a lot of new volunteers.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is, if I could just weigh in just for 2 seconds, that we did put the survey out several times and there were no other takers. So I just wanted to make sure this is, as we talked, Becky, that just to vet this through the rest of the finance meeting.
And it doesn't sound like I'm hearing any objections to that. But if, you know, when we do the finance committee report, maybe we just raise this with the full council and let them know that we certainly welcome any people who want to get to know the financials better and want to take more of a role in understanding the financials of our organization. They can join the committee and they can start by attending a meeting maybe.
Correct.
All right. Back
Next.
to the agenda.
Mhm.
So financial packets were sent out for June and July's consent agenda items. Did anyone have questions on the June and July financials that came out? No? So if there are no questions about the, Mary, I'm not sure.
If that's okay, you would need a vote to move the consent agenda.
Yeah.
And then have it be seconded.
Okay, so we have the minutes of June 28th, 2022, which were in the packet, the June 2022 financials and the July 2022 financials. Do we have a motion to approve these consent agenda items?
I'll
Lee
make that
Hartman,
motion.
so moved. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. If we're in video, do we need to do a roll call vote, Mary?
I will do it very quickly just because I don't have a complete clarification. So Becky Coletta,
Yes,
Val Massard,
Yes,
Stephen Centrisonio,
Yes,
and Lee Hartman.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
okay. And now we're gonna go on to Brenda, actually reviewing the August financials with us. So is Brenda on the phone?
She is.
I'm here, I'm here.
Okay, so do you want to go through and help us review the financials, Brenda?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Okay, first up is the statement of expenditures. And the total expenses for the month were, you want to scan down just a little bit to the circle. Is that okay? Is that Megan? Are you Megan? Are you Megan? Are you the girl tonight? Okay, the total expenses for the month were $181,740.93. And moving ahead to the cash position report, the income for the month was $244,498.69. The disbursements for the month were $211,338.17. The total cash available at month's end was $993,898.58. The OPEB account had a loss of $22,463.15, bringing the ending balance in the OPEB account to $887,055.36. Moving on to the budget resources report. Total receipts for the month being $244,498.69 brings the total receipts in August to $356,019.13. Moving ahead to the AAA report. Total outstanding balance recorded on admin and ombudsman funds for FY22 AAA programs at the end of August were $262,307.50. Total outstanding balance recorded for pass-through funds for AAA for FY22 at the end of August were $1,640,752.05, bringing the total outstanding balance recorded in August to $1,903,059.55.
Brenda, can you just explain why we have outstanding money at the end of the year?
Sean, would you like to take that? Did he leave? Is he here? Or David? No, okay. It's because the
Sean's on
billing,
mute. He's here.
I'm sorry, who?
Said Sean's on mute, I think.
Oh, Sean and David are both on.
Okay, do one of you
Yeah.
want to explain the outstanding balance for AAA at the end of showing at the end of June?
Sure. So this is, these are funds which have not been paid to us by the state. So these are outstanding billings, not necessarily outstanding funds that are not going to be expended to our subgrantees. So
Okay.
the $262,307.50, those are admin funds and ombudsman funds, which are billed against direct labor for the folks that work in the AAA department. If we can, the 1.6 million is outstanding billings for, again, as we call them, pass-through funds. In other words, these are funds that just simply come into OCPC and then are sent back out to our subgrantees based on billings. Again, not necessarily outstanding funds. This is outstanding accounts receivable.
Okay,
Does
All
that
right.
clarify?
that does for me. I don't know if anybody else had a question. Otherwise, Brenda can keep going.
Okay,
Thank you,
Becky.
Sean.
Yep.
Okay, the voluntary transportation account, the August beginning balance was $178,747.41. The restricted fund payments to volunteers in August were $922.78. Donations received into the fund were a total of $544.75, bringing the August ending balance in the fund for $178,379.38. Okay, moving ahead to the ROM August 2022 statement and activity. The balance at the beginning of the month was $179,340.73. August receipts were $5,850, bringing the total receipts in FY23 to $11,700. August expenses were $4,643.88, bringing the total expenses in FY23 to $14,679.97. This brings the ending statement balance to $175,087.25. Moving ahead to the budget spin down report through the end of August FY23. Page 1 expenditures at the end of August were $315,935. The spent to date percentage rate at the end of August was 13.46%. The ideal percentage in the second month of the fiscal year being 16.67% shows that we have a 3.21% surplus. Page 2, budgeted income shows no changes in August. And page 3, pass-through income shows no changes in August. And then the last thing in the financial report is the list of the July combined accounts payable and cash transfers for the month. That's the end of the financial report. Any questions, anyone? Okay.
No questions? If we have no questions, then I would entertain a motion to accept the August financial report.
So moved.
Yeah,
I'll
Lee
second.
Hartman, second.
Mary, roll call?
On the motion of accepting the financials, Becky Coletta,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Steven Santusonio,
Accept.
and Valerie Massard.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Okay, great. So back to our agenda.
Megan, thank you for doing this. I know it's a little bit back and forth, but it's helpful to have it all in one package. So thank you.
So we had discussed this recently, the RFP for fiscal year 23 to 25 for our audit firm. Oh, wait a minute, transportation restricted funds. It was next on the agenda.
No, we went through that. We went through that.
We
That was
went through
the
that.
last-
Okay,
yes,
that was
we
just-
did, we did. No
okay.
problem.
All right, so presentation review of August RFP covering fiscal year 23 to 25. So fiscal year 22 is the last year of our existing audit contract.
Mhm.
We do expect that we may need a new auditor because we were priced lower than our auditor would normally price their services. So Brenda, did you have a presentation here on list of potential auditors, looking for committee input on that and the timeline for the auditor selection process?
I do. Megan, do you want to start the sharing of the audit report?
And while Megan is going through the audit report, so previously we just had an audit firm that had been coming in. We did have a selection committee. It was when Bob Moran was still with us, and we decided to put an RFP up the last time, and that's how Markham was chosen. So it is, we're going to still stick with that process. It seemed to be a good process to follow. So Brenda?
Okay, so first up is the cover letter that this really is just a replica of what we came up with the last time and had been previously voted in. The date obviously will be dated when it goes out, and the auditor we're sending it to would go in the to space. So if everyone wants to just look over the letter, and if there are no objections, this will be the cover letter that will go with the RFP.
And the option to audit the 2 subsequent years, Brenda, in the first paragraph, would that be at the same or at different pricing, or that would be up to them to specify in the proposal?
It would be up to them to specify, and it's absolutely always more each upcoming year. That's just the way that it works. You rarely get an audit 2 years in a row that's the same price. It usually does go up at least a small bit.
Yeah.
So, but Markham did not take the option of just automatically deciding to do the 2 subsequent years. So we're sending an RFP to them as well. And, we're hopeful that they will come in at a price that works, because changing auditors is, wouldn't be my first priority. Little bit complicated, but anyway, so if no one has objections to the cover letter, we can move on to the audit at the RFP itself. Again, same thing. This is the RFP that was put together pretty much several years ago. The changes that have happened are the dates, obviously, as appropriate. Due to the new normal related safety concerns, we no longer require an in-person presentation of multiple bound copies of the audit. Everything pretty much is done virtually. We would get a virtual copy, and obviously we would have a hard copy in the office that would be kept in our files once the RFP has been approved by the committee. So I don't know how much you want to go into the audit itself, Mary.
Yeah, I think what I would just be looking for, this is under the purview certainly of as the executive director, but having it be transparent to go through the finance committee, and this was in your packet to review. It really is, as Brenda said, there is no really huge difference. We just needed to update the dates and then to start soliciting the RFPs. Plus, we wanted to also just reach out to the delegates and alternates if they had some suggestions. Brenda has cultivated, and she'll go through that, but cultivated a really good list of potential auditors who do work with nonprofits, particularly with federal and state funding. So I feel very confident in what has been put forward in terms of this audit RFP. And our hope is, because of the time frame, time is ticking. Brenda is in the middle of the audit right now and up to her eyeballs. But this is again, staying on top of the process and getting into a system every 3 years. So I would just recommend that this RFP is released.
Yes, and if everyone just, please, if you haven't already looked it over, look it over and contact myself and Mary immediately if you have anything that you have an issue with or want changed, whatever it is.
Brenda,
So-
go ahead. I'm sorry, Becky.
Mary, do we actually need a motion on this? If this is something you could do on your own, or do you just want something that says we're in agreement with the RFP going out as presented?
I think an affirmation is appreciated,
Okay.
just respecting the role of the finance committee. And I was just going to say, Brenda, just do you have on this, you have the timetable? I think that's just helpful.
I do. That's coming up next. The proposed timeline follows the RFP.
There we go. So
Yeah. Okay, so this is a new document. I have put this together on my own based on my own knowledge of how the audit works and the time that's needed. So this is a timeline that I have put together. I would like to have the executive committee review this and get back to me. I'm trying to tonight. Final draft RFP.
I actually would at this point just have a review of the time frame. So today's the 21st.
Okay, sorry.
Move forward. No, that's okay, Brenda. This is perfect. And for us just to to really get moving forward on this. And again, I wanted you to see the timeline. So it's coming, right? So the late September, October 5th, December. So, and it's coming knocking on our doors. So I thought it was important for Brenda to review this with you, and again, just one other piece is that while there may not have been necessarily a good path, we're developing a transparency, but it's also a system in place that as we sustain our organization, that whomever is next executive director or the next finance manager, next treasurer, that this is all going to be in place for open discussion. So thank you, Brenda.
So
Mary,
my
how do we come up with the list of auditors to select? I mean, I'm
That's
just. you have to,
that's coming up next.
Okay, sorry, okay. all
No,
right,
that's
so-
good. And Becky, you got a question?
My only question is, do we need it to come back to the committee? I mean, it seems like it's a fairly simple document that if people don't have comments or don't raise questions between now and October 4th, I don't know that we need it to come back unless we want to take a final look at the auditors that it's actually going out to.
what I would recommend, Becky, is that it not necessarily come back. I would look for either one or two members of the finance committee to be part of the selection committee. That's what I would
Okay.
recommend.
Okay. Do you want us to choose that tonight, or do you want us to choose that in October?
I think that if there is anybody who is interested on tonight's meeting, as well as the other members of the finance executive committee, I'll reach out separately to them just to say who would like to serve, and then we move forward. And then as a selection, it's got to come back. You have to trust the staff and then others to review, I think, is the most important. And that was one of the things we talked about when we met separately. So my recommendation again would be tonight, Brenda's going to bring up the list, because I think that part's important. It is an extensive list. If we can move, Megan, just to the next slide. And how this came up was from the last time that the RFP was released. A lot of these names were on it from last time. Internally to the staff, Brenda reached out and to people that we knew. Those were recommended, whether it was Charlie had recommended that we go to Brockton Area Transit and look at their audit. I went to Mass Hire, Greater Brockton, to look at their auditor. They're all encompassed into this list, and then we'll share a list and ask the council delegates and alternates if they had somebody, and then we just move forward.
So really, if anyone wants to, if anyone has any recommendations, would like to add an auditor to this list, just let me know. I will then do due diligence, reaching out, finding out, are they doing audits for nonprofits? Are they taking new clients? A lot of these auditors are not taking new clients because of everything that has happened with COVID, and many of them don't do audits at all. So, I started with a pretty massive list, and this is what we're down to at this point. The ones in yellow will definitely get the RFP, and I'm still waiting to hear back from actually the AAFCPA. We sent him an audit, and he has not yet. He wanted a copy of our audit in order to make his decision, and we have not heard back from him. I will reach out again to him to find out if he's interested, and the other two just waiting to hear back from them. But this at this point is the full list. So if anyone has anyone to add, just let Mary or myself know, and we can easily add them to the list. The ideal is to send out the RFPs to a handful, and then narrow it down to between 3 and 5. And that's where the timeline comes into play, where once we know, once we have the RFPs back, we need to narrow it down to the finalists. And then, we would have to go through the interviewing process, et cetera, et cetera. It's all in the timeline.
So my question is, I was thinking of like a regional firm like Bloom Shapiro. I'm wondering if those are the types of firms you've already reached out to and they say they don't do audits or they're not taking on new clients.
Bloom Shapiro, I would have to, Megan, did I send you the full list or just this list?
There it
Okay.
is.
So these are the ones that I started with. So if Shapiro is not on here, that would be a name that I would need, and I'm happy to reach out.
Okay.
Honestly, the first list was just compiled of just an internet search of auditors and I tried to narrow down to the area as close to us as possible. And I sort of started there. And then a few names have been given to me there, some were recommended by other RPAs. And then, one of the names came from Charlie from the Mass DOT people. One of the names came from David Klein, one of the AAA people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm open for, whatever anyone thinks, whoever someone suggests I reach out to, I'm willing to reach out and find out if they're interested in receiving the RFP.
Okay. So I'm wondering if tonight, if we could get a vote of affirmation or motion to affirm the RFP process outlined tonight and the RFP form sent out tonight, subject to asking the delegates to submit any additional CPA or audit firm names. Anybody willing to make that motion, or do we have more discussion before we do that?
It's Lee Hartman. I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Val seconds.
Okay. Mary, you wanna,
Becky Coletta,
yes?
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Val Massard,
Yes.
Stephen Santisonio, you're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Perfect. That's unanimous. And I do appreciate the time taken tonight on this. The audit, as you know, is the most important document that we have. In terms of not only transparency, we're addressing those needs by having someone like Sean Noel to back up. That was not a finding, but it was raised verbally. So having the right auditor to work with us is going to be critical. So thank you very much.
So if I could, Lee Hartman.
Sure.
So looking at that list, and I should have said this before we switched off, but the company there that does Merrimack and what is that, Central Planning, and so they've got
Yes.
3 others. And I
Yeah.
can tell you from my experience with federal grants, especially, it's a pretty unique thing that they do that's not like a typical audit. So hopefully we can get that company also. And that would make me feel most comfortable if we've had the group that does the bulk of the 2 groups to choose from that do the bulk of these types of things for other regional planning agencies. So just
Yeah,
from my 2 cents.
I've called Lambelat's office twice. And I spoke to the secretary and she was to let him know, and they just have not gotten back to me, but I will reach out a 3rd time tomorrow.
I think to your point, Lee, we won't give up on them and
No, definitely not.
I think this is the part, and I know it was put into a financial packet with a couple months and all these other things going on. Perhaps that what we can do is, and I'll have Brenda come from Brenda, send out, once we go through tonight, send out the RFP and send out the list of those that we contacted and the potential, just to give the delegates and alternates in advance, just separate from all the other things that we're gonna be dealing with, like next week with council, so they can weigh in. This is pretty important to the point of making sure that we have someone who understands our federal and state regulations. So
And do we know who does the Beast MAPCs?
yeah, I do not.
It might be another one just to look at.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. You know what we can do is, Brenda, let's take a look, not only at MAPC, let's make sure, I know you have pretty much all the other regional planning agencies, but let's reach out to the other regional planning agencies.
Yeah,
as well.
I reached out to all of them and I did start with every name that was given to me
Okay.
is within these 2 lists.
Okay.
So-
You know, just Brenda, from the work you do there, I kind of assumed that. So, you know, you're very thorough. So, okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your input always.
I have a question. I can't remember off the top of my head about how big is our audit budget annually?
35,000, I believe it's gone up to.
Yes, I believe last year it was 35,000, yes.
So it started maybe like around 31, and each year
Well,
incrementally.
and honestly, it doubled from when we had our original
Right.
guy. But
Right.
we were getting an audit pretty inexpensively, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So,
That is around the cost. I would think Markham not biting and renewing. I'm sure if they're at 35, I would say at least 38, 40,000.
yeah, I mean, they've been excellent and they've been absolutely excellent. It's like we work well together. They know at this point, we're like a, finely oiled machine. It goes very smoothly. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on this?
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone. This is good.
So, so the next thing on the agenda was the AAA payment status with David Klein. David, was that what we were talking about before? Oh, good night, Sean.
Yeah, David's going to unmute himself.
Thank
One
you,
of the
Mom.
things,
See you
if I
tomorrow.
could, thank you, Brenda. One of the
Can you
things
guys,
that I think that
before I
it's
get into
important to weigh in just on this is that over the last, maybe few months, just internally to the discussion, there's been some payments and from AAA and whether we had to, in order to make payroll, and that we have to, take money from one account. And so Brenda, Charlie, and I had chatted for a minute, and really kind of the crux of the issue has been we weren't receiving AAA payments that were due us, and that's pretty much going back to 2021, fiscal year 2021. So David and the team, we all met and kind of walked ourselves through this. And I've asked David to pull together this memo. And David, just to tee it up for you, I appreciate the work that you and Sean and Brenda have put into this along with Charlie.
Thanks, Mary.
Good night, Val.
Okay, everyone. So thank you for.
Oh, you're not leaving, Val. Thank you.
I'm glad Val's not leaving.
And
Glad I'm not
welcome back, Val.
glad I'm not causing anybody to leave. Okay, as you guys know, just from hearing, if for nothing else, from seeing the latest financials from Brenda, the state owes us quite a bit of money, and it's a really kind of it's to say the least is a distressing situation. They've always been in arrears, but it's usually been 2 to 3 months in arrears. It's never been like this situation where they're 6 to 8 months in arrears. And round figures, you can see here that we've billed about just over $2 million total. Most of that money is considered Older Americans Act money, and Title III is the main portion of our Older Americans Act. So if you hear us talking about Title III money, it's because Title III is a stand-in for Older Americans Act money. The federal fiscal year starts in October, as some people may know, and it ends in September. We just from October to June, there's 9 months, we've received about $500,000 from them, but they still owe us about 1.6 million. Now, I realize these figures don't completely match up with Brenda's latest financials, but the bottom line is the problem is only exacerbated. It hasn't gotten better. We have paid, of that 1.6 million, we've actually paid out 1.2 million to our grantees. And the remaining 400,000, and of course we're doing round figures here, but I was just looking at Sean's figures. The exact figure is $429,066.57 we still owe to our sub-grantees, and that would the amount of the 400,000 plus the 1.2 million we've already paid out equals the 1.6 that has been billed to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. EOEA stands for Executive Office of Elder Affairs. So in this memo, Mary asked me to put together a couple reasons why this could be happening. And here are the 4 main reasons. There's, some of them are understandable. Since COVID, there's been a big turnover in the EOEA fiscal staff. And, a lot of agencies have dealt with this, but it's really impacted them. The second thing, and also I think most of us understand this, except that is what it's done is that CARES and ARPA funding basically tripled the amount of funding that we normally get. CARES was, I don't know, 1.2 million, and ARPA is another 1.5 million. So it's close to tripling the money that is coming through the system, if you will. Number 3 is something that we hope is getting better, possible antiquated or inefficient internal EOEA or state level controller systems. Before, apparently they were looking at payouts one at a time at the controller's level, and now they've been allowed to okay payments at a batch level. And this I should preface that this is after the payments have already been okayed by EOEA. It's the state level comptroller who is, causing another bottleneck. But hopefully that part of it's ameliorated. But the biggest issue, I think, because the others are somewhat out of our control, is number 4, is that the EOEA and the state are not making reimbursement payments until they receive the actual contract and funding of Title III money from the Older Americans Act from the ACL, Administration for Community Living, which is the organization at the federal level that pays out the funding. Part of this process, and this is an ACL issue, not a Massachusetts issue, is that their contract doesn't come in until like April, and sometimes it's even later than April. And so at some point a number of years ago, EOEA apparently decided that they weren't going to be making payments to the AAAs until the contract came in. We being one of the 3 smallest AAAs, because we're a standalone AAA, we were receiving some more cash flow earlier on in the federal fiscal year than the larger organizations. But this past year, that totally dried up. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation that we find ourselves in too. So I had made a suggestion, which, if you keep on scrolling down, Mary, I can't even remember where this memo is. Keep going. Oh, did I put my suggestion there? Well, maybe not.
Yeah, your suggestion should
Oh,
consider
defense of-
proposing this.
Right. I call this the Defensive Area Agency on Aging and Aging Service Access Points Act. You know, I think there's probably a better name for that, but whatever. Knowing that the state is pretty flush with money, and knowing that the Older Americans Act money comes in every year, I was wondering if we could possibly advocate for the legislature to just allocate the entire sum of money, which is again just over $30 million, that the area agencies on aging need to work with, and understanding that it really wouldn't be increasing the federal on the state budget, because the money would be coming in to repay that amount. The money would be coming in from the ACL. So this idea was floated to EOEA and to our advocacy agency, Mass Home Care. And we actually got a pretty good response from Mass Home Care. Mary, I don't know if you or Megan is controlling this, but is there any way I could possibly share my screen from this point?
You can, just a time frame.
Right.
Megan is the one who's managing the screen.
Okay.
But go on to the next, like, what do you need to share on the screen, David?
Well, okay, so the last bullet point here, first of all, we did receive just under $150,000 in between when we were originally discussing it, and so some money came in, but of the 1.6 million in the Title III contract, we've only received that 150,000. So there's still, just on that one contract, there's still, 1.4 to $1.5 million behind. The second bullet point says that further payments are in process, and we believe them. On the other hand, they say that every week, and then nothing comes in, or very little comes in. So it's getting trying. So the third bullet point is maybe the most encouraging thing, and that's that our advocacy agency, which is called Mass Home Care, or MHC, they've started working on taking this up on our behalf. And there's been a letter which I don't have to share if there's not enough time, but there's a letter that they wrote to both the House and the Senate Ways and Means Committee in very technical terms, describing the problem and advocating for a solution to the problem. The solution is not quite what I said, as in I was suggesting that they raise this money, but apparently there's a way that they could advance fund the money without actually appropriating it, which, I wouldn't know about that. But so if you want to see the letter, I have it, or it can be forwarded out. It's very technical. There's 3 issues that they are raised in what they call a supplemental appropriation. And the first 2 issues are not our issues. The first 2 issues are 2 other issues that are being advocated for. One is about elder housing. That's the first issue. The second issue is about financing for protective services, which is not something that we do, but Old Colony Elder Services, our partner agency here in Brockton does. But the third issue, the third issue on page 5 of their letter, 5 out of 7 pages, you'll find the title is routine regarding the routine administration of Older Americans Act funding. And they go on to the person who did this, a guy named Pete Tiernan, did an examination of the last 6 years of Older Americans Act funding. And he shows in the letter year by year that the money always comes in at about the same amount. It's coming in at between 26 and 29 million. And except for 1 year where it went down slightly, every year it goes up, not down. In addition to that, because of the backflow of money that we still have, here it is. So as you can see here, this is addressed to the House Ways and Means and the Senate Ways and Means. And you could see where I've underlined here, it says in this first paragraph, 2 other matters are important technical concerns to support the sound business operations relative to the delivery of elder protective services and federal Older Americans Act funding. If you could scroll through this to page 5, that would be great. I've got the page numbers up top. Okay, so here's where this begins. And what they're saying here in yellow, most specifically, Mass Home Care is offering language that is intended to signal to all departments and managers involved to give appropriate deference to the Secretary of Elder Affairs on the business affairs of Older Americans Act funding. I mean, this is kind of like a shot across the bow to EOEA to get their act together to make the payouts. And in the next paragraph, they say, all entities involved in the management and deployment of Older Act funding should be supporting the reasonable and predictable business process that supports routine contracting, delivery, and payment of services that are planned to be compensated for OAA funding. And that last part there, the payment of services, that's what's not happening. We're paying out, but they're not paying us back.
Can I ask you, David, at what point does this become a true cash flow issue for us?
That's a Sean, Brenda, Mary.
Well, and that's why I started gathering everybody together, because I was concerned, well, I guess the concern would come if Brenda tells me she's concerned. That's my first and foremost, but there was some question in terms of where are we? And we don't have the issue with Mass DOT. We don't have the issue with green communities. We don't have the issues with, MHP or anything. This is the only organization that we have an issue with. And internally, we talked about where we need to move this, and that becomes a policy. And that's why we have also that legislative subcommittee as well. So that is why it's on the agenda, to tell you that it has been at least an alert for me that, for us to dig into savings accounts so we can get through and kind of put our finger in the air to hope that we can get some funding. Both Sean and Brenda, as well as David, they can see that there are things that are being worked on. It's in queue. It's got one set of approvals, but it's a constant oversight and ask. And when David came, this letter was just shared today. So when this was shared, where David said that it's now been to this advocacy group, it is getting of a concern. And I would say we're going to keep an eye on this between now and the next finance meeting and get updated. My hope is that the advocacy group keeps working, but even David, when we chatted today, Patrick Hamilton, who had been with the organization for so many years, said this was an issue 20 years ago. So my mindset from my chair is that we can't just say, okay, like we gotta wait for another 20 years, that there is something systematically, not going well with this system. And, again, I think part of it's been patient thing because of COVID. There's been a change over personnel, but at some point we're putting out money to these organizations and we are not, we're kind of being the one that's strapped.
If you could advance to the following page, you might find this interesting. This is, by the way, what you're just passing is Pete Tiernan's examination of the annual AAA Older Americans Act funding. And you can see that from 2017 to 2022, the figures have gone up from 26 million to 29 million.
Yep.
And we've been getting between 1 and 1.5 million of that money
Yep.
consistently.
Thanks, David.
At the top here, what's interesting here is that Pete also estimated in this first sentence that the Commonwealth is going to open state fiscal year 23 with an unexpended Older Americans Act funding balance of 26 million. And if you take that 26 million and you add it to the 29 million, which is expected to come in for for federal fiscal year 23, he comes up toward the end of this paragraph with an estimated Older Americans Act revenue of approximately 55.6 million. And so, their point of view here is that they have to have it's a complicated process at the EOEA level, and we understand that, but at the same time, they're dealing with different contracts, but this is the main one. At the same time, they're holding the rest of us hostage. And the reason, Becky and Val, or whoever asked questions before, the reason that we're being affected as much or more than others is because most of the other organizations are part of a joint agency with an area service access point. In other words, there'd be an OCPC and OCES together, and the aging service access points are handling the state funding, and the state funding is way more than this. So they can move money around in order, Becky, in order to contain cash flow issues. They have other levels to move around that we don't currently have.
Okay.
David, thank you.
But I do think that this is a very strong, it's a very strong, it might not seem like it's a very strong letter, but it's a pretty strong letter because they're actually criticizing without overtly criticizing the EOEA and the way they're handling things.
If I could, Becky and members, just Brenda, from your perspective as the fiscal manager, your thoughts about, the question that was raised, how concerned are you about this, and from the fiscal manager's perspective?
Well, we've stopped sending payments to the sub-grantees until they get caught up, because part of the problem is that from the beginning of time, we always paid them immediately, and they've always been a few months behind, but it always worked because every month we would get a large sum of money from them. And now they've fallen so far behind and have skipped payments in the normal amounts over the course of, probably three different months over at different times. So it did start creating a bit of a cash flow problem, but we get regular payments from Mass DOT, and our regular AP is manageable. It's the sub-grantees that are the large amounts of the AP. So we have stopped sending any sub-grantee payments out until they get caught up, because it was becoming a problem. We haven't had to borrow out of any savings accounts
Right.
yet, and we're
Right.
holding our own. We're doing okay.
Mhm.
So, so that's the best
Thanks,
answer
Brenda.
I can give.
Thanks, Brenda. And David, I would recommend then to you, Madam Chair, that we keep this item on the agenda for finance, and on a monthly basis, just do a testing of where we are. And David can update in terms of the advocacy that's being done by the mass home care. And when we
Is
get to
there-
the Mhm.
Is there any reason at this point to ask delegates to go back to their state reps and their state senators and ask for help on this? Or do we feel that this advocacy is moving along in a good way and we should not ask our delegates to get involved at this stage?
I think it's going at the pace that we want to. again, we would, if we were going to ask the legislators and the delegates to get involved, we would really need to set aside, it's a whole explanation of this process, and it would probably take up a whole council meeting if we were going to do that. And I would almost recommend maybe this is an item for the legislative subcommittee to take this, vet it out, and then make the recommendation to the full council meeting.
Yeah,
Through the
I think,
finance.
Becky, I think the danger in doing that is that in this situation currently, we're advocating as a whole AAA group. And if we advocate solely on our own, then it might be like piling on in a negative way. I don't know.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, but that's my initial thought.
That's why I was asking. The sub-grantees that we're now not paying until we get money in, are they able to, is that in any way jeopardizing ongoing operations?
Well, the biggest grantee, as Sean would attest and Brenda would attest, is Old Colony Elder Services themselves. And I think under ordinary circumstances, they might be complaining to us a little bit, but they understand full well what's going on. So we're not hearing any negative things from them. And the other grantees, fortunately, we have a very long history with. The Councils on Aging and organizations like BAMSI and other Catholic charities and Cape Verdean Association, and Brockton organizations that we really have been working with for 20 years or more. So I think that's working in our favor in this case.
Okay.
But thank you for asking about that. I appreciate it.
Anybody else have questions, or are we just going to leave this on the agenda for next month as well to follow? All right, then we'll just leave it on the agenda for next month, Mary.
Yes, thank you.
The next issue are fiscal policies, and Mary, you were going to address fiscal policies.
Yep, I am. I'm just going to be short on this. Brenda already had made some headways in terms of bullet point. We had mentioned that maybe about 5 meetings ago, Christine Joy had provided a sample of fiscal policy of an organization that she works with. The concern that I have is the staff capacity. Brenda's under audit. There's still a whole lot of things going on. What I would like to do is to reach out to hire a consultant, either someone like Bob Moran or even Doug Silvestri, to hire them to help us pull these fiscal policies together to make some inroads and to bring them back to this committee. So I have that authority. It would be somewhere like around $1,000 initially. But I think for us to take this on our table, it's just so much going on. So that is going to be just my recommendation. Just wanted to touch base with you. And if you had somebody else that you would like to bring in, but we've got great confidence in Bob Moran. And I haven't reached out to anybody, by the way, to see if they're interested, but I just really I think it would make sense as we're tightening up, and again, our trust in Brenda and Sean and David and Charlie and everybody. So that's going to be, I just wanted to let you know that's what my process will be. And we'll bring that to you and update this at the next finance meeting. And I can go right into the OPEB declaration of trust. So at the, I'm sorry, did anybody have any questions on the policies? So, and just, I can be very short on the declaration of trust. So we tweaked it. It was finally passed at the annual meeting on June 29th. Summer hit, and my summer really wasn't a summer, and I have not, we have not gotten to the next steps, which means we have to take up some elections and things of that nature. So I will be having an update in formality in terms of our the next steps for the declaration trust to be filed and to be members to be appointed. So that part's really important. All that great work that was done. I felt, unfortunately, the summer got away from me, and I want to be able to get us to that. And we're in good shape for that. But just wanted to update you. We're behind. I'm behind on that.
Okay, so we'll leave that on the agenda for the next meeting. And I think at the, and then once we have the trustees in place, we can start to look at maybe RFP to look at whether we're going to change fund managers or leave it the way it is.
That is correct.
Okay.
I think what we're actually going to be doing is put an RFP out. That was the decided upon, that in order for us to do that, we have to create an RFP.
Right, but we're not going to create the RFP until we have the trustees in place, or we're going to start working on that now.
it will be the trustees, work to do that.
Okay. Any questions on that? Or if there's no questions on that, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, Mary, roll call, or can we just say,
I think at this point, but we can just say